this is the second demo for your S1 Hockney landscape. You've completed the background and we've discussed how Hockney uses a range of tones to create depth and perspective in his painting, and how in the foreground his colours are stronger and darker, whereas the colours get lighter and paler as it goes further away in the distance to create the effect of depth. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding colour to our trees and any other types of bushes, etc. that we have in our landscape. So the first thing you want to do is you want to decide on the colours for your trees. Now it's entirely up to you which colours you choose. Hockney always uses bright, strong colours so that they're eye-catching and it creates excitement in the painting. I'm going to choose blue for my trees, and the reason I'm going to choose blue is because blue is a complementary colour to orange. If you look at them in the colour wheel, they're opposite one another in the colour wheel. This makes the painting a lot more vibrant and makes it look a lot more exciting. If you had a green background, red would be a complementary colour to green, and if you had a purple background, yellow would be a good colour for your trees. However, you don't have to choose complementary colours. You might want to choose colours that are harmonious, which are next to one another on the colour wheel. You can choose whichever colour you want to. Hockney did use colours that were realistic as well, so if you want to stick to using green in your trees, then that would be perfectly acceptable, but he did also use colours that weren't realistic as well. So I'm going to go for blue. Now, in the same way that you have with your tones and shades in your background, you want to use tones and shades of colours to create depth in your painting when you're doing your trees. To achieve that, the trees in the foreground are going to be darker, the trees in the background are going to be lighter. So varying these tones of trees again emphasises the feeling of depth in your painting. So I'm going to do my front two trees here. I've decided I'm using blue, so I've mixed some blue on my palette here, and I'm adding a tiny amount of black to make that tone a wee bit darker, because the darker it is, the closer the object is towards you. So I'm going to block these trees in a darker blue, taking my time to make sure that I stick within the shape of the tree. So my brush, the point of my brush is going down the side of the line for the tree first, and then I'll fill it in. And what I'm also going to do is try to keep my brush strokes going in the same direction. So in this case, my brush strokes are going vertically up and down. So that's my dark trees. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing my trees in the centre. So they're not going to be as light as the ones in the background. So this time, like I did with my background, I'm going to use just a pure colour. So I'm going to use pure blue for these trees. And I'm just going to do the barks of these trees and the trunks. And then for the trees in the distance here, I'm going to mix a lot of white with the blue, create a darker tone, lighter tone, sorry, not darker tone, lighter tone. Trying to make sure I don't use too much water in my brush so that the paint dries fairly quickly. Now I'm going to put some leaves onto these trees, and I think I'm going to use green. Again, remembering the range of tones, colours in the background, tones in the background are lighter, tones in the foreground are darker. So I'm going to do the colour of the tones in the background first, of those trees away up on that hill. So I'm going to add a bit of white to my green to make it a bit paler. Once you've blocked in all your trees and your bushes and you've got your dark to your light tones, then the last step in painting your Hockney style landscape is to start adding textures. And when you look at Hockney's landscapes, and you can go back and look at the presentations and look at all the different types of textures, he puts lots of lines and dashes on the tree trunks to show the texture of the bark. He's got dashes and lines and V shapes and zigzag shapes in the grass to show the heather in the grass, etc. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start by adding texture in the foreground here, and I'm going to use a darker reddish colour for the foreground, and I'm going to add these jaggy lines that I've got here to indicate the texture in the grass here at the front and the long grass. So that's what I've got here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a lighter tone of blue, and I'm going to add texture to the bark of the trees in the foreground, and I'm going to use little dashes and wriggly lines to try and emulate the texture of the bark. Nobody's allowed to use black as a pure colour. Black is only on your palette to mix with another colour to make it darker. I don't want to see any pure black paint, not even for any of the textural details. And then I'm going to put lots of little curvy half circle lines onto the trees here to show the texture of the bushes. I'm going to use a yellow to see if that goes on top quite well. there we have it, not quite finished, but I've got a range of different types of mark making to indicate a range of textures. So I've got the wriggly lines on the bark of the tree to show the texture. I've got dashes, spiky dashes in the grass in the foreground. I've got stripy lines here in the distance to show that the fields are cropped, and V shapes here for this sort of heather, little curves in the trees here to show the bushes and the leaves, and then a textured pathway that gets lighter as it goes further away in the distance. Not fully complete, but it shows you a nearly finished Hockney landscape, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to produce as well.